My family is rich. To be more precise, my mother's side of the family is filthy rich. They're greedy and miserly, making them very unpleasant to coexist with. Only one person in that branch of the family has ever shown a genuine semblance of interest in my small family. My Uncle Terry. From the cesspool of shitty relatives that I have, Uncle Terry's the only one who has been there for me when I needed it. He's the only relative who's had a constant positive presence throughout my childhood. Now around 9 p.m., Uncle Terry called me to ask if I would house sit his favorite home. I was trying to deny his offer because I just gotten a part-time job, but he was persistent nonetheless. He has a lakeside home that is located in an isolated villa up in the mountains. The home is a simple yet luxurious 4-bedroom house that has a great view of Lake Triumph, a body of water that has the feel of an oasis. It's quite a stunning area. Oliver, you'd be doing me a massive favor if you could stay here for about 3 months while I'm away, he said insistently. Well, I'm more than willing, Uncle, but I do have a job that I just got and I can't afford... He interrupted me mid-sentence. I'll pay you. Money isn't a problem. I'm serious. You're the only person I truly trust to live in my home. I knew money wasn't a problem for him, so I relented. The deal was too enticing. And so I packed my belongings that same day. He did share a detail that slightly hurt my resolve to heed his request. I do have a recommendation for when you get up here, though. Please don't go swimming. I know it's going to be tempting. It is a beautiful lake, but we had 2 people who drowned last summer and their bodies were never found. There was a massive search, but the lake is deep and they ended up stopping the search after 2 weeks. He cautioned me thoroughly. And so we discussed my payment and I started to drive to Lake Triumph the next day, bright and early. It took me 2 days to make the trek up to Lake Triumph. My uncle had paid me in advance to cover gas and food expenses, and I made it there extremely early. The first rays of dawn were just barely peeking over the horizon as I pulled up to my uncle's house. His neighbor's home caught my attention immediately as I parked. It was an imposing structure. The house was monolithic compared to any of the nearby homes. Its brown paint was weathered by time, and its wood cladding was eroded, with moss filling the empty spaces. Strangely enough, its lawn was cared for and nicely trimmed, almost professionally done. The only sign of life that this Goliath of a mansion had was an old sun-bleached kids' playground, which made the stark contrast between the poshness of the lawn and the senescence of the home significant. I walked into my uncle's front yard looking for the key to the home. Uncle Terry said he had left it under a flower pot. His wife, Grace, had at least 10 of them. Funny enough, this lakeside home was a wedding gift to my uncle from my rapacious grandpa. A rare moment of generosity from the old coot. When I found the key, I entered and resisted the urge to fall dead on the couch because I needed to witness it while everyone else was asleep. I headed out the backyard and was kissed by the crisp morning air that was flooded by the aqueous scent of the green, translucent lake. Thin fog and dozens of dragonflies floated over the water. I wanted to lay down, but the grass was way too damp for that, so I just contemplated the scene, standing there for a while. As I turned to go back inside, I heard something from the lake make bubbles and move in the water. The fish were starting to stir, I assumed. I couldn't wait to fully enjoy the lake. I woke up around noon. The 2-day trip was still taking an effect on my body, but I wanted to go fishing. I just wanted to enjoy being by the lake to compensate for not being allowed to swim. I could disobey, but I don't really fancy the thought of drowning. The afternoon was relaxing. The temperature was just right for being outdoors. Not even the insects were bothering me. They seemed to be solely focused on gravitating over the lake. It was a heavenly summer day. Throughout the afternoon, I wasn't able to catch a single fish, even though I could swear I heard their movements earlier. It was almost as if the lake was lifeless, not a single pull on my bait, and in the end it was inconsequential, because I fell asleep at the water's edge and woke to darkness hours later. It took me a minute to remember where I was. Eventually, my confusion subsided, and I sat up to gather my fishing pole. From a distance, I could see a light that was directly behind my uncle's house. Now, I was very unfamiliar with the area, so I decided to proceed with caution. I put my stuff in a thick bush to avoid making noise, and I continued, making sure to keep hidden behind the trees and bushes. I managed to get close enough that I could see the figure holding the light. It was an elderly man that was wearing a black bathrobe. He was standing by the water, whistling as if beckoning something towards him. The clouds started fleeting across the night sky, letting the pale moonlight rain down in intervals on the old man as he spoke to the lake. "Come on out, old friend. I have to know how much longer I have to wait until I recover what I've lost." His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in a very long time. I was frozen in place because a heartbeat later, the most vile, inhuman sound met my ears. It was a gurgling imitation of the old man's voice. The sound emitted from the lake made me think of a drowning person struggling to breathe, but the water in their desperate lungs was preventing them from performing the natural body function. It was not replying to the old man. It was merely repeating what he had said, and the old man acted like he was in a lively conversation. "Now I know I'm impatient. You're my only companion, old friend. Without you, I'd be so lonely, just rotting away in my home." He put his lantern down and picked up a bag that was sitting near his feet as the unknown thing continued to grotesquely mimic him. I could not see the contents of the plastic bag, but I heard the splash it made when he threw the contents into the dark lake. What ensued was a series of gross crunching noises that only a feral animal could produce while devouring its prey. "Soon, you're going to make my wish come true, and we won't be alone anymore." The old man stood there singing to himself while listening to the symphony of flesh being devoured that exuded from the lake. After a while, the crude mastications ceased, and the old man lumbered slowly back down into his home, humming to himself, content. I had to crawl back into my uncle's home. My legs had gone completely numb. The pins and needles tortured me while I dragged myself inside. I needed to call my uncle immediately. He answered after the 5th call. He sounded sleepy as he answered. "Oliver, sorry it's really early here in Italy. Is something wrong?" I told him about the old man trespassing into the backyard. I kept specific details of the old man's ritual to myself, hoping my uncle had seen something similar from his neighbor before. "Well, that was old man William. Well, I completely forgot about him. I'm sorry, Oliver. Interact as little as possible with him. You did the right thing by not approaching him," he said apologetically. "Old man William is probably about 70 years old. He lives alone, and there is a rumor among the other neighbors that his family, who previously lived with him, had him chained to the floor of his basement. But who knows if that's true?" My skin prickled at the disturbing detail. My Uncle Terry continued to talk about old man William nonchalantly. "And if you have any further problems with him, talk with his homemade, John. I think he stops by the old man's mansion every Monday and Thursday, or whenever the old man needs him." "Have you ever had any problems with him?" I asked, a bit desperate. I could feel he was close to ending the call. "Not really. He just gets confused and wanders into our side occasionally. The lake is technically a common area, so he's not trespassing per se. but it is freaky to find him on occasion sleeping on the grass or on our back porch. I was mortified. He reassured me that old man Williams was harmless. I wasn't entirely so sure. Every fiber in my body was telling me otherwise. My uncle had not experienced what I had. He was living in blissful ignorance. I couldn't sleep after he ended the call. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hold him on the phone any longer. Every shadow was making me jump, and so, like a child, I turned the TV on, not caring what channel. I just needed some noise. I eventually managed to doze off, and in the morning I woke up to some type of Christian sermon channel playing on the TV. The pastor was giving one of the most aggressive sermons I'd ever heard personally. By the precious blood of Jesus Christ, her sins will be judged, and God will cast you into the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, where the fire is never quenched, and where the worm dieth not. It is a place called hell, and hell is real. Jesus spoke more of hell than he did of heaven. I turned it off after the last verse. It was kind of making me uncomfortable. My family is Christian, and any verse or sermon that talks about hell or the end of times scares me to no end. I decided to sit outside on the front porch, staring at the empty road. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. The fear of disappointing my uncle, the only relative who cares about me and who is a whole ocean away, had me chained down to this place. What would I say? That a geriatric old man scared me and I ran away after being paid? No. I couldn't stop mulling over my dilemma extensively, though. Thankfully, the roar of an old brown Honda Odyssey snapped me out of my introspective stupor. Out of the struggling minivan emerged a tall, burly man who was dressed in dark blue nurse-like scrubs. The bear of a man had a bag full of cleaning supplies that he started using on the children's playground. I headed over to introduce myself. I was sure this was Old Man Williams' homemade, John. I'm not the most extroverted social butterfly, but I managed the most cheerful, "Good morning," I could. He looked up. "Oh, hello. You're a new face around here," he said while spraying water on the swing. "What brings you around? You're related to them?" he said while pointing at my uncle's home. I told him my name and I explained my situation, making sure to add surface-level details of my encounter with his employer. "Oh yeah, the old codger can give you a good scare if you're not paying attention," he said while scratching his head. "I know from personal experience. The old man spends most of his time in his basement. It's made me jump out of my skin when I'm cleaning. Well, sometimes he just stands and he stares at me from the doorways," John said. He then leaned in and said in a hushed tone, "You know, I only continue to work for him because he pays so well. So I kind of ignore his weird behaviors and the strange tasks that he makes me do," he said, motioning towards the playground. "Why has he got you cleaning the old playground then?" I asked, confused. "He says he needs to have it in perfect condition for when his family and his grandchildren come back. I've tried contacting his family. They don't want anything to do with him, and his grandchildren are young adults now. I don't know about you, but between us, you would think they'd be falling in line for that will money," John said, shrugging. The old man's family was the opposite of mine. They fall in line for my grandpa's will like vultures to a carcass. They all want a piece. I hate my grandpa. He's a greedy bastard that I really wish I didn't have to interact with. He's the type of person who studies people to see if they're worth his time, specifically his own flesh and blood. If he finds your presence a waste of time, then you're shunned instantly. You still get invited to major events like birthdays and Thanksgiving, Christmas, all that, but it's like you just don't exist. And that's how my dad, mom, and yours truly get treated. It's quite obnoxious. So what does he do in his basement? I asked, hoping to get something useful out of the conversation. All I was getting is that old man William was creepy, which I already knew, and that his family didn't love him. Well, he paints a lot. I think he has converted the basement into an art studio, he said, now fully invested into the conversation. The basement's the one place I'm not allowed to be in, but he brings the paintings upstairs sometimes, and they're actually pretty impressive. Do you want to see them? I wanted to reject his offer, but I accepted. I wanted to find a way to rationalize what I'd seen and heard the previous night. John checked to make sure that old man William had secluded himself to the basement. The inside of the mansion was dull and had antiques furnished everywhere, like what you would expect an old person's home to look like, I guess. The stairs of the mansion seemed to have a life of their own. They creaked without being stepped on. John led me down a narrow hallway that was covered in medium-sized paintings. The dark green walls were covered to the brim with canvases depicting Lake Triumph. The color scheme of the paintings were purely composed of earthly tones, green and brown. Some portrayed the lake surrounding by people staring down at the water. Others showed the same people floating in the lake, looking up at the sky. The fully clothed people that were floating in the water looked soulless. Their drifting bodies seemed abandoned. While the paintings were impressive, they felt full of a silent despair. It was unnerving. If I had to compare them to something else, it would be Goya's black paintings. And then a thought occurred to me as I studied the paintings closer. Was the old man using the medium of painting to fill the hole his family had left? I also noticed something curious. The paintings were signed Lake Hel. I pointed this out to John. I thought these paintings were of Lake Triumph. Is this a different lake? Oh, it's Lake Triumph, all right. According to Mr. William, Lake Hel was the original name of the lake until it was bought by a wealthy investor, and the area was developed, creating the villa we're in. I felt like I was suffocating. The eyes of the people in the painting were boring into me, so I excused myself and left John back to his work. I went back to the lake to retrieve my fishing stuff. I felt safer during the day when I could see my surroundings clearly. I stared at the dragonflies as they were flying by, and before then, I didn't know how varied in colors they were. Blue, red, greens, yellow. Their beautiful colors were iridescent, and their exoskeletons looked gradiented in the sunlight. Dragonflies in certain regions of Mexico were called Caballotos del Diablo, which translates to horses of the devil. I wonder if Satan himself resides in the water of Lake Triumph. Well, I know I'm being illogical, making connections where there aren't any, but I just don't know what to think. Anyway, as I carried my stuff back, I saw dark, menacing clouds overtaking the sky rapidly. The dragonflies were in a frenzy as I ran. They were flying into my face, trying to get into my eyes. After 10 minutes, it started pouring. I could hear John's cursing as he fled into the old man's mansion. The ambiance outside took on a gray, sickly tone. The wind was wailing like a crying woman, and the trees were swaying back and forth, performing a twisted dance with the wind. The heavens were furious. I peeked outside to look at the lake while it stormed so intensely. Old man William was out there by the water, which was getting pummeled by rain and debris. His arms were spread as if embracing the storm. He was screaming. I couldn't hear what he was saying because the storm was washing away his voice. And then, out of the blue, John ran into the punishing rain, grabbing the old man and hauling him back into the mansion. The old man was smiling a toothless grin, while he and his aide were being soaked. I finally was able to make out what he was screaming. All along, he was screaming, "It's time!" That night, I dreamed of a spectral nightmare. My fear of Old Man William and the raging storm had tainted my slumber and gave birth to this abomination of a dream. In this night terror, I was standing idly in an old dirt floor basement. The surroundings of the hot underground room were black as night. A single naked light bulb was hanging down from the low ceiling. The light was blinding. I was distorted. My world was spinning in circles. And the only thing that was keeping me grounded was the slow scraping of a chain being dragged on the cracked dirt floor. It was him, that decrepit old man. He was pacing in circles. The yellow light lit his blotchy, leathery skin as he ranted alone in the dark room, ignoring my presence. "Oh, my angel, my beloved angel, they cut your wings just like they did to me. That's why we dwell in the depths. That's why we dwell in the depths. They don't understand. They cannot comprehend that eternity is a lie. Nothing lasts, not even the divine. We're all rotting. We have to hold on to each other. We will reclaim what is rightfully ours soon enough. That moment will arrive." He had completed his clockwise rotation, so he stood in front of me, facing away, staring into the shadows. He slowly turned in my direction, finally acknowledging my intrusion. His voice gurgled as if he were on the verge of vomiting. "They are mine." And then dark green bile surged from within him, spilling over his dry lips, spraying onto my face and causing me to wake up from the abhorrent nightmare. I could still smell the viscous bile, a mix of rotten baby food and stomach acid. I coughed and I spat at the floor, trying to rid myself of the nasty smell. I felt nauseous, and my right ear was inexplicably hot and moist. I felt like utter shit. I went to the bathroom to find towels to clean the mess I had created, and then I noticed the sound of a flailing door and stumbled my way to the living room to figure out what was going on. I had left the back door open. The outside door was being flung back and forth like a rag doll by the storm. I'd left the door wide open for anyone to come inside and make themselves at home. The next couple of days were a frightening mass of tornado watches, tornado warnings, and incessant severe thunderstorms. Many dragonflies and other vermin were sticking to the windows, clinging on for life while the storms raged throughout the mountain. The weather was so bad that John seemed to be stranded in the old man's home. His van was still parked in the driveway. Poor guy was alone with that old man. Meanwhile, I was living in delirium. I kept checking the windows to see if any tornado had landed nearby. There was no phone service when I needed it, and the constant barrage of severe weather alerts when there was a sliver of service made me want to smash my phone. I was going insane. My dreams weren't any help either. Every night I was having a nightmare of humanoid beings crawling out of Lake Triumph, breaking into my uncle's home, and mutilating me to shreds. A disturbing detail of my nightmares is that I'm not alone in being mauled alive. Old Man William is there as well. He's standing there naked and fearless, completely unfazed while his flabby flesh and skin are being devoured. A complete juxtaposition to me. While he watches stoically, I'm screaming, feeling every bit a burning pain. And I'm so exhausted. After another 2 nights of raging blitzkrieg, the storms finally abated around 11:30 at night. I was staring at the lake in a daze from my room. The only thing illuminating the black darkness were the fireflies that floated over the water, and the silent impeding thunder that was miles away, moving slowly in this direction like a slow giant. But the tranquil scene was a facade. In truth, it was an ugly hour. It was a calm before my own personal storm. Old Man William's back porch light disturbed the glooming dark. Out of the belly of his abode, he shambled slowly towards the lake. His movements were much more labored than usual. I felt dread rise up in me when I realized he was heaving behind him a body. A primal urge to confirm what I had just seen took over me. I went to the front of the house to take the long way around to Lake Triumph. I didn't want to be spotted, so I stepped into the firefly darkness, not knowing that I was on the verge of witnessing a miracle. The air felt charged and ready for another storm as I trudged through the sodden grass. I watched as Old Man William finished submerging John's still body in the lake. The old man groveled out of the water. A childlike giggle leaked out of his toothless maw. He regained his footing on the soaked ground, and almost instantaneously, those familiar mastications rose from the water again. But this time, there was a difference to them. They were louder and more savage, like a group of pigs eating meat fervently. That same crippling terror that had held me in place last time returned, and it grew tenfold when the old man started talking to me. "My dear neighbor, there is no need for you to hide anymore. I know you've been there the whole time, the entire time. Come and bear witness to my angel's miracle. Come here. Become an alibi to my existence." He was beckoning me forward. I abandoned my hiding spot. The abhorrent dismantling of flesh and bones had become background noise. My natural instincts were screaming at me to run away, but my morbid curiosity was overpowering me, pulling me closer and closer to the water's edge. I wanted to see an angel's miracle. Abruptly, the shrieks, grunts, and snarls stopped in unison, and I stopped dead in my tracks. Old Man William breathed a long sigh of what seemed to be relief. "It is finally done, my dear neighbor. Stay with me until the witching hour." Something started rising from the water. Multiple slimy humanoid hands gripped the grass. The unearthly imitations materialized themselves in this unholy night. They were imitating John's voice, the old man's voice, and my voice simultaneously. I could not fathom what I was looking at. But then slowly I started backing away. My heart rate was increasing. Their postures were poised to lunge at me. They sprinted toward me and I fled. I slipped many times, and I could hear their hungry movements and voices behind me. I managed to make it to my car and start the engine. The last thing I saw as I sped away was the old man standing at his front door, watching me. Now I was going dangerously fast down the mountain, and I was forced to slow down when it started raining heavily again. The blood in my head pounded at the thought of them lurking in the shadows of the mountain. I drove until morning until I reached town. I felt like my eyes were about to implode from stress. Now I wanted to believe everything that had happened was a fever dream, a schizophrenic delusion, but my mud-covered jeans and the vivid words of the old man were branded into my mind. I pulled into a gas station and loitered there for a good while because I had decided to call the police. Now, I don't know if I was sending a couple of lambs to the slaughterhouse, but I needed someone else to see it, not just me. God, I was going to go mad if it was just me. But I waited anxiously for their call back. I requested an update on John's condition. The only way I got the dispatcher to take my call seriously was by telling her that I saw John severely hurt to the point of mortis. After about an hour or so, I finally got the call back. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep the nervousness out of my tone. "Young man, do you realize that the misuse of 911 is a jailable offense, especially for such a severe allegation?" said the very annoyed voice of an officer. "Excuse me?" I said, completely caught off guard. I expected the disaster. I expected a lot of things, but not this. "Son, you called earlier claiming a murder had occurred. We're here and all we found is a happy family of John alive and well." I was beyond confused. Family? John is alive? Nothing was making sense. "No, officer, you have to be mistaken. I saw it with my own eyes, I swear," I screamed into the phone. "Young man, whatever drugs you have been taking, you need to stop taking them immediately. Everyone here is fine," he said, unperturbed by my supplications. "To give you some peace of mind, just listen to this grandpa playing with his grandchildren." I heard the officer leaving his car, going outside. I heard the distinct sound of children playing on a swing set. But it sounded wrong. Their laughter had that gargling quality. My body started shivering uncontrollably because I also heard two other voices accompanying the children's. John's voice and a woman's voice that I didn't recognize. They also had that disgusting quality. The woman spoke with that gargling tone. "Dad, you have to be careful. Don't hurt yourself pushing the kids. Let Daniel push them." Some male, distorted, gross laughter joined the merry conversation. The officer had been talking with old man William the whole time, but I was too distracted to notice. The old man's raspy voice rose from the clamor of voices. "Well, it's okay, officer. The young man just got confused. I don't want him to get into trouble. He's taking care of his uncle's home. He needs to return. He needs to come back to his family." I hung up. My brain was boiling because he was right. I'm going back. I want to reject my blood, but the pull is strong. I'm going back because I'm chained to my family. I guess I never had any other choice.